All right. Now, I was thinking today, what am I gonna talk about? What important? I'm wearing Senators gear, and I'll pull out the old Senators jersey. I got a Senators jersey their first year in the NHL because they cheered for Ottawa, so I'm gonna wear Senators gear just to keep the Ottawa people, just to keep them steady. Everything's fine, as they say in anger management. Goose fraba, it works. Um, Try it, it works. Because you feel so stupid saying it that you're not angry anymore. But I get asked a lot. So your favorite teams are Boston and Vancouver. How was 2011 for you? 2011 was the dream that turned into a nightmare. It was everything I could have hoped for, and it was everything that possibly could go wrong went wrong. When Vancouver and Boston make the playoffs, when they both make the playoffs, I have a countdown. Vancouver is 12 wins from the Stanley Cup final. Boston is 12 wins from the Stanley Cup final. So the magic number is 24. And there had been years where I got into the single digits and I got excited, and that didn't happen. And there were years where I felt like maybe one or the other might make it, and then it didn't happen. And in 2011, the stars aligned. When Vancouver reached the conference final against San Jose, I was like, okay, well, they're going to beat San Jose. The first round against Chicago, I really didn't think they were going to win. Even when they were up 3-0, and then Torres threw that stupid hit on Seabrook, and the Blackhawks woke up. And when the Blackhawks won Game 4, I'm like, oh, shit. Like, it just, in my mind, I was like, you guys gave them life. Why are you letting them get into this series? Why are you giving them hope? And it ended up being a Game 7 nail-biter in overtime. But when they won that and they played Nashville, I'm like, okay, well, they'll beat Nashville. And then they played San Jose. I'm like, they can beat San Jose. And it's not an insult to Nashville or San Jose. It's just Vancouver at that time, all pistons were firing. That's why Mike Gillis gave them all the money and the no movement contracts, because honestly, in the 2011 Stanley Cup run until the final, they looked pretty damned unbeatable. They looked fantastic. Every portion of their game was awesome. They lost something when they lost Ehrhoff. Honestly, when Ehrhoff was lost in the offseason, I didn't think it was that big a deal, but it was. Ehrhoff was never the same. The Canucks' power play was never the same. But I digress. The Bruins, meanwhile, had their scare from Montreal, and then they avenged themselves against Philly. And it was awesome because the year before, Philly had come back from 3-0 down and knocked the Bruins out. And I took a lot of flack at work. Holy shit, did I, especially since Boston in Game 7 was up 3-0 and lost 4-3. Like, I was grilled at work by the guys. Like, they couldn't wait to tell me and to laugh at me because it was an afternoon game. So guys were kind of like, well, it's 3-0 Boston. I guess you guys survived that scare. And then they come back, Philly won and they won it for, your Bruins choked again. And it's like, oh, shit. And I couldn't live it down. So when Boston avenged that in 2011, I was like, cool. And then they were against Tampa. And the Tampa series was nail biter because Tampa's power play was unstoppable. Boston could not stop it. In Game 7, there were no power plays. And I remember all the conspiracy theorists came out. Gregory Campbell is the son of Colin Campbell, who works for the league office. So therefore, Gary Bettman put in the word before Game 7 to the referees not to call a penalty. The idea of this boggles the mind, but the internet is home to crazy people, so this was the theory. And if Gregory Campbell winning a Stanley Cup was so important, where the fuck were they the year before when Philly came back and beat them 4 straight? But I digress. When Vancouver knocked out San Jose, I was happy. I was very happy. But I had a thing with Boston, and Boston is my thing. Like, okay, how do I put this? You love Star Wars. Okay, let's say you love Star Wars, but everybody loves Star Wars. But you have this little cult movie that nobody else knows about, and it's yours. You own it. And you expose other people to it, and they may not get it. And it's okay because it's yours. It's much like my love for the Bruins. Other people don't get it. And it's okay because it's mine. I own it. I've owned it since the late 80s. It's mine. It's part of me. They're my buddy bees, my big bad Bruins. And when they won in the Stanley Cup playoffs, I played Shipping Up to Boston. I just blared it through the whole house, and I would dance and sing after each win in the playoffs. That was my tradition. When they knocked out Tampa, I not only blared Shipping Out to Boston, I danced around this apartment yelling, one of my favorite teams is about to win the Stanley Cup. And I yelled that over and over. The kids were like, Dad, settle down. And I'm like, I can't. One of my favorite teams has to win the Stanley Cup. They're facing each other. This is great. Then the series started. Game 1 was a snooze. Game 1 was awful hockey. It was boring as shit. Both teams sat back. And then Vancouver scored, and then it started. Vancouver started chirping, Boston started chirping back, and they started having little scrums, and both teams were acting like complete fucking assholes. And I was ashamed. Honestly, I was ashamed in the moment that my two favorite teams were both behaving like pricks on the grandest stage you can have for a hockey team. And they were both behaving piss poorly. So Vancouver wins the first two at home, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess Vancouver's probably going to win this series. All they have to do is win one in Boston. But there's something else. I should backtrack here. When Boston knocked out Tampa, a lot of people I work with and a lot of people I know who are Canuck fans said, well, I was worried about Tampa, but I'm not worried about Boston. We can beat Boston. We've got this. And I'm like, wait a second. I'm a Bruins fan. I've watched every game they've played in the playoffs religiously. They're firing on all cylinders. It's not going to be that easy. And they're like, I know you're a Bruins fan, and I know you're probably cheering for them, but they're dead. The Canucks are going to kill them. And I'm like, okay, wait, seriously. And I started getting really defensive. I started getting pissed. And it started entering my mind like, you know what? Some of these Canucks fans are arrogant fucking pricks. And they're arrogant for no reason. And I see it with other fans too in the NHL. It's not just Canucks fans, but there's a cockiness, like, we've got this, we're going to win. And it's like, oh yeah, like all those other Stanley Cup finals you've won, right? Like, I want to say it and I don't. Because to me, you can't be cocky and arrogant unless you've won something. President's Trophy doesn't count. They give you an award and then you're done. It's not the Stanley Cup. Ask President's Trophy winners since or before then, and it means you nothing. Ask the Capitals what it won them this year. It won them nothing. Does it give Ovechkin any kind of pride that he won a President's Trophy? No. Ovechkin is pissed that he hasn't won a Stanley Cup, and he's this close to going to the KHL because he's sick and tired of failing in the playoffs. And he takes a lot of blame. And it's not fair anymore. I used to call him Ovechchoke, but it's just not fair anymore. It isn't, because it's not his fault. Anyways. Hearing all these fans, we've got this. We could beat Boston. Ha! Boston. Who's Boston? It's like, they're my fucking Bruins, you assholes. And they're big, and they're strong, and they're fast, and they're talented. And they got some guy in net named Timmy. Every time Thomas made a save, a big save, I would yell, Timmy! Like, the South Park. And it drove my family nuts. I was the only hockey fan in the house, so I had to entertain myself. Because nobody else gave a shit. So I'd yell, Timmy! At the top of my lungs. Every time Lucic made a great play, Luch! Like, I was right there with him. And then Krug works too. But Krug was not 2011. That was 2013. A Stanley Cup final run that was this close to knocking out the Blackhawks. They were so close. They lost it in 6. They've played fantastic hockey. I love my Bruins. But in 2011, I wasn't allowed. In Game 3, when Luongo laid an egg, and the whole Canucks team basically went, we don't want to win tonight, I was pissed. And then I get back to work, and again I'm hearing at work, well, we've got it. I mean, as long as we don't lose at home. And I'm like, you guys don't get it. You don't let the Bruins into the series. You've got them down. Stomp them. Game 4, again, Boston. Easy win. Not a problem. Vancouver on the road in that Stanley Cup final series, abysmal, horrible, disgusted. I'm absolutely disgusted as a Canucks fan, even now, having seen how the entire team played. There was no one person to blame. Everybody threw rocks at Luongo. Luongo had 3 shutouts in the final. So either he had a shutout or they lost. There's no pressure. None. No pressure. So they came home for game 5 and they won it. So when they won that game, I was like, okay, well, I guess the Canucks should survive this, and they should win. They should win it in 6. When Game 6 happened, I've never been angrier as a hockey fan. I've never been angrier than I was in that game. The Canucks made absolutely no effort from the opening faceoff till the end. The Bruins, oh, they were focused. They were pissed. And you could see that guys like Sean Thornton and Lucic and basically the entire blue line, they had made up their mind. These guys aren't beating us. Mark Recchi said after that series, he has never hated a team in his entire almost 20-year career as much as he hated the Vancouver Canucks in 2011. Ever. And that's saying something. This is a guy who's been through a lot of teams, a lot of Stanley Cup playoffs. He had 3 Stanley Cup rings, and he'd never hated anybody as much as he hated the Canucks. And I watched Kessler beacon off. I watched Burroughs beacon off. Torres being a prick. And it's like, geez, these are the home. I'm supposed to be more a Canucks fan than a Bruins fan. But in Game 6, I realized I am a Canucks fan. Because if I was more a Bruins fan, when the Bruins were just beating the shit out of Vancouver, I would have laughed my ass off. I was pissed. I was pissed because I knew Luongo was going to take the flack for it. Even though on every goal, he didn't have a chance. There was no defense. There was no effort made by anybody. These guys were just skating around the ice like, it's fine. We can go home for Game 7. Just don't get hurt and we'll be fine. It's no big deal. And I said, I made my ex-wife turn the game off. She said, well, I want to watch. I said, why do you want to watch that? I said, it's over. And I actually had to go out on the deck. I was so pissed off. And she said, why are you so angry? I said, because they're going to lose Game 7. I said, you don't get humiliated in Game 6 and then win Game 7. I said, they're dead. And she's like, oh, you're overreacting. And then I went to work between Game 6 and 7. Everybody's like, oh, we're going to win. And I said, no, you're not. I was straight up at that point. I was like, no, the Bruins have this. At that point, I was in full Bruins fan mode. I was like, the Bruins have this. They're like, no, they don't. They haven't beat us yet at home. And I'm like, they're going to win Game 7. It's going to happen. So again, people are all ready to pounce all over me. Yeah, that game wasn't in any doubt. Game 7 was never in doubt. Right from the opening faceoff, Boston had it. That was my ex-wife's turn to turn off the television. So because I knew, I wasn't upset. Because I was well aware of what was going to happen. Rather than be angry like I was in Game 6, Game 7 was like, okay, I'll watch this. So I had to watch it online. I had to load up CBC online and I had to watch it there. And I didn't update my ex when there was a goal scored because she was already really angry. And I had to beg to see the celebration after the game. I was like, can I watch this on the TV, please? And she really thought about not letting me. I was like, come on. I said, I've never seen Boston win a Stanley Cup. It would be really nice to see it on television and not watch it on a crappy computer monitor. So I watched. And then the other half of my prediction came true, which was Vancouver's going to burn. And when they hit Game 7, I said Vancouver's going to burn. And friends of mine said, well, yeah, if they lose. I said, no, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't. The city of Vancouver, anytime the Vancouver Canucks get close to the Stanley Cup, the city will burn. And it is not dependent on whether they win or lose. The idea that, oh, well, if they'd won, that riot wouldn't have happened. Bullshit. The city of Vancouver has, for whatever reason, a bad mix. And it's not fans per se. There's a lot of people in Canucks jerseys that were rioting in 2011, though. 94, I fully believe that most of the shit disturbers were from out of town, and they weren't hardcore Canucks fans. They just want to start shit. But in 2011, there were a lot of Canucks fans in that crowd. And now that it's happened twice, you got to think if Vancouver went back to the final, it happens again. Especially if it goes to a Game 7. If it's a 4-game sweep, maybe not. But when that riot happened, it gutted me. It was like any joy that I could have taken in that moment from my favorite team winning a Stanley Cup was gone. And I said out loud that night, I hope Vancouver never goes to a Stanley Cup final again. I'm so disgusted with the entire city. And it's hard for me to say that because they are my favorite team. But in between cocky fans, rioting fans, and just, the fact that apparently a guy in a Bruins jersey got thrown off one of the Vancouver bridges, I didn't feel safe. I literally, for the first few months after Boston won a Stanley Cup, there's no way in hell you'd see me wearing this. There's no way I wore a Bruins jersey. I couldn't. Because I genuinely had concern based on reports I'd heard in Vancouver and just the way people were here. And the first time I wore a Bruins jersey publicly, a cop drove by me and gave me one of these. And I'm like, what the fuck? You're a cop. Why are... Like, and that was months after the final. It was almost a year before I felt comfortable to wear a Boston jersey. And to this day, if I wear a Boston jersey out in public, unless it is the Winter Classic from this year, I never get a compliment on a Bruins jersey. And it's almost as if there's a secret society. There's people I know locally who are also Bruins fans. And there's a kinship that I feel with those people. That it's like we are a minority and we can't tell people what we are or they'll hate us. So we bond over that. The 2011 Stanley Cup final wasn't fun. And it's too bad because it was something I had counted down to for years. I have never done that countdown again. I never want to see it again. I remember in 2013 when Boston went to the final, I was so happy when Vancouver was out because I was like, good, I don't have to worry about another Boston-Vancouver debacle. And then when it was Chicago, I was pissed at the time because I was like, I knew Chicago was going to beat Boston, but Boston made it a real series and they fought really hard, and I was really proud of them. Despite the fact they lost in the final, I was really, really proud of them. They did really well. There was no reason for them to hang their heads. Even Yager, and Yager takes a lot of shit for not scoring goals. He didn't score a single goal in that playoff run, but he made some really good plays, and he was. I think that was the last time I saw him in the playoffs where he was really, really effective, and he played a secondary role with the Bruins so well that spring/summer, and it's just too bad. It's too bad that a team I cheered for over 20 years wins the Stanley Cup and I can't really cheer. And I hope and pray at some point that I get a chance to cheer. That Boston wins it again, or I guess Vancouver wins it. Vancouver wins it. It's going to be a riot again. City of Vancouver better board itself up and have its riot police ready because it'll be a riot all over again. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyways, that's my 2011 Stanley Cup story. And there you have it. What should have been a fantastic, joyous, wonderful experience was pretty much annihilated from the moment that Boston and Vancouver won the conference championships right through the riot. I didn't have fun with it, and I should have. And I just didn't. Anyways, thanks for watching.